Well, hi everybody. This is Sharon Livingston, and I am here with one of my idols, my personal idols, Jack Canfield. Oh my God. Hi Jack, how are you?
Hi, Sharon. I'm fine. Thank you.
So, I know you must get this all the time. I feel like I got the most incredible gift a number of times over my life. And one of them was many years ago when I was still a puppy and I went to this humanistic psychology program, and you were giving some kind of program on use of story or fairy tales or something like that. And it was maybe like an hour and a half or 2 hour workshop. It wasn't real long. But I went in and you had us remember a favorite fairy tale from when we were little, and mine was Snow White. And you invited us to think about what part we played in that story. And of course I was Snow White, and it was my story. It was my story. And since then I got a PhD in psychology, and I learned how to do all kinds of amazing things. And I created a model called Snow White Theory, which is how the different dwarfs show up in every group situation. And where they sit tells you where they stand. And so I created my own theory of group dynamics, which I've now taught for like 25 years. And it started in that workshop. So I am so grateful to you for that. You have no idea. And yeah, so Jack Canfield is one of the most amazing people I've ever met for so many reasons. And one of them is he invented this whole series of books called Chicken Soup for the Soul. And can you talk a little bit about them, Jack?
Yeah, but that came about in a very unique way. I was running around the country running workshops, some for educators, some for the general public, and people would come up to me and say, "That story you told about the puppies, that in the book anywhere? That story about the Girl Scout who sold 3,000 boxes of Girl Scout cookies. My daughter needs to read that. My sales staff needs to hear that story." And I'd always have to say no. And then one day I'm flying back on a plane from Boston to Los Angeles, where I was living at the time, and I remember thinking, God's knocking on my head saying, "Put those stories in a book." So I made a list of all the stories I knew. It was about 70 stories. I thought I'll write two a week, give myself a couple of days to write it and perfect it. And then by the end of the year, I'll have 100 stories. And I got up to about 70, and then I had lunch with Mark Victor Hansen. It was actually breakfast. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing this book." He said, "What it's about?" I told him. He said, "I want to finish it with you." And I said, "Well, really, you got to have 30 stories. We need 100. And he said, "Okay." So we ended up with 101 stories. And the series took off. It didn't take off immediately. One of the great stories is it took us a year to sell the book because nobody thought people would read short stories. And then when it came out, it took 14 months before we hit a bestseller list. So it's like keep on keeping on.
Wow.
Yeah, we practiced something called the rule of 5. Every day, do 5 specific action steps. And we'd call 5 people to interview us. We'd call 5 newspapers. We'd send out 5 free books to celebrity endorsers, Once we sent a box to the O.J. Simpson jury because they weren't allowed to read the newspaper and magazine because they were sequestered. So, and that actually turned into a national news story. So little by little, and then we hit the bestseller list, and it climbed up, and we started saying, well, if you have a story, send it in. Maybe we'll do another book. Now we're at 240, 50 books later, something like that. Sold 500 million copies in 47 languages around.
My God.
It's insane, So that was a wonderful ride. And then about, 5, 6 years ago, I got bored with the stories. Like stories that should have been inspiring me weren't inspiring me anymore. And so we had an offer to buy the company, and I sold it to a group in New York who's continued to produce really good books.
Oh my goodness.
And it allowed me to then shift my focus to what I'm doing now, running seminars and doing trainings and writing about
And they're
things.
wonderful. Oh my God, I just came back from a week-long immersion, first in Train the Trainer and then in Breakthrough to Success, and it was a miracle. Just an incredible experience. And I do a lot of training, as you know, and for me to be on the other side and be the recipient of this wonderful, from light and funny to deep and soul-searching, and to do it in a way that I felt like I could walk out of there and do it. You gave it in such a fantastic format that it was clear, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. And there were other people there who were not experienced at all, and they could do it. And the fact that you taught it in such a way that was in bite-sized chunks, and then it was ordered in a way so you went deeper and deeper, and then lighter, and then deeper and deeper, and lighter, and spelled out every point along the continuum about how to do it. There was not one person there who was not joyous. At the end of it, everybody was just in a state of bliss. And I love one of the things that you say, which is, don't do anything now. Don't make any major change for 2 weeks. Let it settle in, and then see where you go. So it was fantastic. It was totally fantastic.
Thank you. Well, I'm loving work. It's fun.
And so here behind you, I see a stack of books, the 30-Day Sobriety Solution. Tell us about that. How did you come to this book?
Well, I've been teaching the success principles, and David Andrews, who's my co-author of the book, David Andrews, I met him at a workshop he was learning how to be a best-selling author. I was one of the presenters at this workshop. And he told me on a break about his coaching program that he'd been doing for sobriety. And he said, "You're a big part of that." And I said, "Really? How's that?" Well, he had been an alcoholic. He had gone to rehab. He had relapsed 3 times. He felt a huge amount of shame and guilt, and his wife was basically ultimatuming that, if you don't change this, we're going to be done. I'm going to take my daughters and leave. So he was in a very difficult place. Then someone gave him a Tony Robbins tape, and he listened to it, and he said, "Oh my God, why aren't they teaching us this stuff in relapse, in rehab? Why aren't we getting, NLP?" And then he got my book and he read that and he started applying that to his life, and Brian Tracy and other people, John Gray. And so he said, this is what needs to be happening for people who want to get sober. And so he put together a coaching program. When I met him, I think he'd been doing it for 5 or 6 years. He had an 80%, 79.6% recovery rate.
Oh my God.
Long term, over the course of, 2 or 3 years later.
Wow.
And if you look at AA, which I love AA because I sound like Donald Trump. I love AA. He's saying he loves everybody. But anyway, I had 2 children that had issues with marijuana and alcohol. AA was really helpful for them. Rehab is really helpful. Problem is, as Tommy Rosen, who runs something called Recovery 2.0, said to me when I was being interviewed by him, he said, my sponsor was hugging me when I was getting my 20-year chip. And he whispered in my ear, "You're 1 in 10,000." Meaning only 1 in 10,000 who joins AA makes 20 years sober. And he said, there's something wrong with that, And I would go to AA meetings and I would say with my children, I would go, oh my God, if I could just jump in and do an exercise, lead a meditation, have people do a process with each other, heal their past, do a forgiveness exercise, visualize their ideal future. And so basically I said, we've got to get this work out to the general public. And we don't know if it'll work just as a book. It worked as a coaching program. So we took about a year to write the book. Then we tested it just as a book with about 30 people. We still got an 80% recovery rate for people. Just from the book. No website, no visualization exercises. Now we have a live companion website that's fully operational. People go in there on day 1 when they buy the book, and they go in every day for whatever day they're working on. There's 30 solutions over 30 days. Each one is a lesson that you go through, a process that you do. And we're getting tremendous interaction with people in the chat room and the forum. People are saying, what's exciting is that this book came out January 19th. And now people are just finishing their 30 days, and we're getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails and letters and posts on Amazon.com. This book changed my life. 30 days was easy. I didn't think it would happen. So Dave and I was so committed because I have 2 children. My mother was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic. I write in the first chapter about how, I don't know if you remember those old radios that kind of came up this high off the ground, and they were just a little radio that the bottom was all hollow with a speaker.
Right.
And it was like a piece of furniture. Well, I used to hide in there when my dad got drunk because he was totally violent when he got drunk.
Wow.
And so I would basically get in there and pull it back toward the wall and wait till he went to sleep because he would just rage around and beat anybody that was around and so forth. Fortunately, when I was 6, my mother divorced my dad and we lived with my grandmother, who also turned out to be an alcoholic, but not violent. So there was that, if there is an alcoholic gene, and the verdict's out on that. Certainly in my family, it hit my grandmother, my aunt, my mother, my father, my stepfather, And my two of my three sons and my stepdaughter, that's not genetic, but she had the same issue. But they're all sober now and they're all doing well. And so I know this stuff works.
Fantastic. That is absolutely fantastic. And it was really interesting because someone stood up in Breakthrough to Success last week and said that he had hit his 30th day and then his 31st day, and he was so grateful. And what I was hearing also is that while people were making these changes with alcohol, they were also making changes in the rest of their lives, whether it was with food or with some other addictive behavior or just some other pattern they wanted to break, that the exercises you were having them do was kind of taking the place of running to something for comfort or solace or to hide.
Right. Yeah. The nice thing about any work like this, and it's really a system that works in a very specific way. I say that success comes from doing the right thing in the right way at the right time in the right order. And so there's a cascade effect. You start to affect one area of your life, and you learn to apply these goal setting and affirmations and visualization and meditation and stress relaxation, changing your thinking, changing how you hold questions. And one of the big questions people say is, why can't I stop drinking? Well, that presupposes you can't stop drinking.
Exactly.
For the reason why. If you have the question, how can I stop drinking? Then you get a whole different set of answers. So the book is full of these transitions that occur in your thinking, in your behavior, in your habits, so that the cascade effect starts to move out into other areas of your life: relationships, exercise, meditation, spending time with your children. One of my favorite stories was about a guy we just got we have a forum, and he put in that after his first week, he said, Friday came, and well, Friday's when I drink. Friday's when I watch the baseball game and drink beer or go out with my buddies, and what am I going to do? And so he said, I said to my kids and my wife, what would you like to do? And he said, well, let's have movie night. Go off and so he went out to buy a movie, rent a movie, and buy popcorn and some pizzas. And he said, I was walking down the alcohol aisle because that's where you had to go to get to the checkout counter. And he said, I was looking there and I wasn't craving it. I wasn't needing it. And he said, I literally came home, and with my kids, we had one of the best evenings of my life. I hadn't had a family evening like that in years. And someone else wrote right after that, my God, it's Friday night, and I didn't know what to do. I was thinking I was going to not be able to make it through the night. You just gave me a great idea. I'm going to go do that with some friends. And so they're supporting each other through this, and it's really working.
That is fantastic. And I have to tell you that not having alcohol for that whole week, I don't care about having it anymore. Like, I would have it a little bit every now and then. And I'm not a heavy drinker, but, I enjoy a glass of wine. I've stopped drinking.
It's funny, just so people don't know what we're talking about. In my seminar, this is the 5 days, you were there for 7, because you came for to train the trainer before that.
Right.
We have a no drinking rule until the end of the workshop. And I also play by that rule. And I had been doing the 30 days just to make sure that I would take me through it, so I knew what people were going through. I got home a few days ago. My wife said, let's go out for dinner last night. I said, fine, we go out for dinner. I ordered a glass of Chardonnay. I drank about 1/3 of it. I stopped drinking it because it was starting to make my head feel funny.
Right.
And I didn't like feeling as much as I was liking not having that feeling.
Right.
And so I totally know what you mean. We become addicted to the dopamine and serotonin rush that occurs when we drink alcohol, when we eat sugar. And so we get addicted to that. However, the problem is when you continue to do the sugar and the alcohol, and alcohol is basically fermented sugar, what happens is that the body's ability to produce its own dopamine and serotonin gets interrupted, and it takes a couple weeks. This is why we ask people during the 30-day sobriety solution, we say you may be able to just cut back and add drinking back in again in a more holistic way where you don't get drunk and all that. And what we find is that it takes about 14 days for the brain to start stabilizing and not crave the sugar, and about 30 days for the brain to be creating its own. And all of a sudden, all those cravings are gone. And so for me, I was like, I feel better. And I don't crave it. For me, when I would drink alcohol, and I wasn't a heavy drinker, but then have dessert, why not? because my willpower went down. You know, a
Right.
couple glasses of wine, oh,
Right.
what the hell?
Right,
You know, you eat
exactly.
the, you said you weren't going to, you order the dessert, you know, then people go out if they get really drunk, they have unprotected sex, they get into accidents, they lose their license, they're hungover on their job. I was just looking at a review that was posted 16 minutes ago on Amazon.com because I was checking out how we're doing. Where are we? Our numbers on Amazon, they're doing very well. But what happened is that he was saying he just really didn't realize how good he could feel. He was wasting his life. He was drinking to the point. He said, I thought I could just drink 1 or 2 glasses of wine. Next thing I know, I drank a whole bottle. I had to wake up in the middle of the night. My heart was racing. I drunk the thing. I go to work with a hangover. My boss would notice it. You know, I mean, it's we don't really realize. And I think I told you when we were at the training, research shows if you have more than 6 or 7 glasses of alcohol a week, your chances of breast cancer go up. If you have 12 or 13, which would just mean 2 glasses of wine a day, 70% increase in breast cancer among women.
Wow.
Just from drinking that much alcohol. We all think, well, 2 glasses of wine, that's not a big deal. The resveratrol is healthy. You can get resveratrol in a pill. You know, it's like in the grape skins. You don't need the alcohol.
Absolutely. So I think it's amazing. I mean, just that little bit of, just the 7 days for me, and I'm eating better also. I'm not a bad eater, but I'm eating better. So I'm making better choices. So thank you very much. That's totally amazing how that can happen. And can we talk a little bit about Train the Trainer and Breakthrough to Success? Because they are amazing programs. I was so delighted to be there. It was just an amazing process. And the way, you know, I studied with, I think I told you this. In the very beginning, I got to be in a group with Carl Rogers and one of his, you know, small group with lots of people. And I'm always amazed at someone who can treat a large audience as if it's a small group. And you were a master at that. That was so beautifully done. And forgive me, Carl, but better than Carl. And because of I shouldn't be comparing, I know. But the way that you did it made it so easy to form the groups. I remember this. This was a 9-day live-in workshop that I was involved in, and it took like 2 hours for the group to decide to form smaller groups, until finally they had to break them into groups. And you make small groups in like 1 minute. They're in a group in a minute. So, how did you come up with that program, and what's your mission with that? Tell us about it.
Well, you know, it started out, I was a high school teacher. This is where I got into all this. And I became more interested in why my kids weren't motivated to learn than I was in teaching history. I took a workshop with a man named W. Clement Stone, who was a self-made multimillionaire worth $600 million, had a big insurance company. And he wrote a book called The Success System Never Fails. And he had a foundation where he was trying to teach this to kids in schools. So I got hired by that company to be a trainer. And I was 23 or 4 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And I got mentored by some of the best people on the planet to do this work. And then I left that work, went back to graduate school for a couple of years. And I took, my major was psychological education. How do you educate people about psychological issues? How do you study yourself in school, you know, kind of thing. And we were always like, find a partner, break into groups of 4, you know. So I just kind of grew up with no big deal. And, you know, and I actually co-led a workshop with Carl Rogers once. He was so gracious to lead a 1-day workshop with me.
Oh, wow.
And he was a master at what he did. I still to this think he was one of the greatest ever. But with that person-centered therapy, which you were experiencing, it's all about, well, what does the group want to do? How does it want to do it? You know, and after a while, you realize some things just work better than other things. So let's just go there.
Right.
And so we can very quickly. So I then took a job with a company called Insight Training Seminars, which is a huge, we do 350 people in a room almost every weekend somewhere. I think one year I ran 37 weekend workshops out of 52 weekends. So I got really, really, really good at what I did.
Right.
Then I decided the guy who was the head of, I thought, this is a cult, I'm getting out. So I left. I started my own company. And then I had offices in 5 cities, and I was running, again, 30, 40 workshops a year. And you do that for 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to get good at it.
Yes.
And And here's the other thing. I've read over 3,000 books. I've listened to at least 5,000 hours worth of CDs and YouTube videos like TED Talks. I have taken.
And you have them at your tip of your tongue. You'll like that. Like I'm watching. Like how does he have that right there? Right there. He's citing these books. That blew my mind.
I have good memory. I mean, if you say things long enough, and I keep changing it up and adding new things, but someone brings up something, I used to say that 30 times a year 5 years ago, I still remember it. I read voraciously, and I've taken over 600 trainings myself, where I've showed up for a weekend or a 10-day training. I used to say everything from A to Z, Eureka to Zen, and I'm a learner. If you go to any workshop I'm in the front row taking notes, and I review the notes. I teach people, I used to read a book a day, and I've actually changed that. I read a book a week now. And what I do is I read it, and then I review it, and then I review it again. I take the things I highlighted, I apply it. I use the term called shelf-esteem or shelf-help. People take notes and put them on their shelf. It doesn't really change your life, So what I found is it's not so much what you know, it's what you do with what you know.
Yes.
So if you read a book and you get one actionable idea that changes something, whether it's relationships, communication, diet, meditation, finance, how to be a better parent. A lot of people are terrible lovers, and their wife say, "Yeah, I've never had an orgasm." I say, "Well, have you ever read a book about it, mister?" And they go, "No." There's like 100 books, 55 videos you can watch. Why wouldn't you want to be a great lover, a great parent, a great gardener, know how to cook well, play the guitar, whatever? And so for me, I approach everything with how can I become a master at it?
I love that. It's interesting because I was sitting in the front row a couple times I went to the back because I thought I shouldn't be hogging the front row. But I learned like that. That's how I learn. So I'm relieved to hear that you did the same thing. So
sure.
It made a huge difference to be up there. I take copious notes, and I find that if I don't take notes, it doesn't quite go in, like I'm a visual kinesthetic learner. So if I'm watching and writing, I get it.
Yeah, well, let's talk for a minute about who this training's for, because a lot of times people think these personal development trainings are just to come and grow yourself, but you train coaches or people out there that have private practices, coaching, counseling. And, one of the things I say to coaches is you can make a lot more money and have a lot more impact if you can work with a group than work with one person. And as you saw and experienced, all those exercises we did, they could be done one-on-one with a client.
Absolutely.
Or they could be done with 30 people in 15 groups of 2, having the people asking each other questions. And, the questions are very well designed to do the work, if you will. And the other thing is, when you do a public workshop, you then get coaching clients. We have we do over $1 million a year in coaching. I have 7 coaches that work for the Canfield coaching company that we have. And most of those people are people that saw me speak, or people that heard me on an interview like this, or they saw me on a TED Talk or whatever, that type of thing. I didn't do a TED Talk, but those kind of things. Right. And so it's like the more you can get out there in the world and work with more people, the more impact you can have, and you can build your clientele and your base of clients faster.
So that's one of the things that happened in the pairings where we'd be asking like a repetitive question. And I loved how you did that because people get very confused about that. They think they have to jump in and help. And the only purpose of the questioner is to ask the question and just be there quietly and listen, and then ask it again and ask it again. And that allows the person who's talking, who's answering, to hear themselves. And they become their own observing ego, right? So they get to look at themselves, and it's not somebody saying, oh, well, you're this or you're that or the other thing, or, once in a while, there was one time when someone didn't do the exercise at all and said he couldn't do it, and I put on, sorry about that. I put on my coach hat, and I said, well, what if, and I took it another direction. I thought it was kind of a little ballsy for doing that, but I did. And it worked.
That's good. Yeah, no, I always tell people, if you're a professional counselor or a coach or a therapist, let the questions do the work. But if a person gets stuck and you can help them, by all means help them. One of the phrases, if you remember, I said, you want to be a student to the people above you, a fellow traveler to people at the same level, and a teacher to those below you. And you're going to find yourself in different positions. Maybe you're better at coaching, but I'm better at finances. You might be a better at communication skills, but maybe I'm a lot better at handling real estate deals. So we all can be of support to each other, and that's great. You did a good job, I'm sure.
And I think it went fine. The thing also is you've got all these materials. You've got templates. You've got materials. You make it possible for someone to leave there and go do it. I'm going to do that program. I'm going to set it up now to run a large scale program, which I haven't done. I haven't thought about doing it, but I'm going to do it now because I could see. I said, "Oh my God, I can do that! I can do that!" He taught me how to do that. I'm going to do that. Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, my goal, because you heard me share it there, is my goal is to have 1 million trainers teaching this work somewhere in the world by the year 2030. So we've got another 14 years to go. And we now have over 1,000 people that have graduated from our home study program, which I resisted. I honestly didn't think, Sharon, that you could teach people to do this work, which is experiential, by video. But we now have 1,000 people that are doing it, that are getting jobs. Penny Bungado in the Philippines just got a 12 workshop contract with the federal government. It's more than paid for her investment, like 5 times over.
Wow. We
have people in China, in India, in Sri Lanka, 79 countries where people are now teaching this, having learned it online. And then there's people like yourself who've come to the live training, which we do, which includes the video training, the home study, but also 2 live weeks. And we have now over 500 graduates of people doing that in 27 countries. So I think anyone who wants to make a difference, and anyone who becomes a coach, they want to make a difference. They care about transforming the world.
Right.
And so let's do it in a very powerful way. Let's reach more people faster and create the world we want. Because as we look out there, all you have to do is look at the current political race and you realize that this is a very kind of dangerous time we're living in. There's a lot of issues, a lot of problems. We have poverty, we have drug addiction everywhere, we have economic meltdown occurring in the world, we have unemployment, we have, someone, I think every 17 minutes someone dies from a drunk driving accident.
Oh my God.
It's insane, the problems. Kids dropping out of school, gangs, people shooting each other, whether it's the cops shooting the black people or the people and the citizens shooting the cops. I mean, it's out of control. We have terrorism because kids have no sense of meaning, so they join terrorist groups that gives them a gun. They feel powerful for the first time, and they feel like they belong to something that has a purpose. We need to provide that in our schools, in our corporations, and in the communities in general.
So, one of the interesting things that I've been hearing just recently is that there's a lot more of that need to attach to spirit, to be doing good in the world. And at the same time, while that's happening, it's like open the doors for the other side. And so, there's, it's like you need to have that good energy, because as people are trying to grow, there are things they have to grow away from or deal with. And the more we can grow, I'm not saying this in the exact way I want to say it, it's like there's always a balance. And so that we need to be strong in our roots, we need to be strong in our wish to help the world, to make it a better place. And I'm not articulating it exactly as I want to say it, but there's an opportunity now. And sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes things come up that are hard to deal with. But if we can, if we can be rooted,
One of the things I teach people, you may remember, is that the purpose of setting goals, whether it's to make a difference or whether it's to make a lot of money. And I think you can do well by doing good. I make multiple millions of dollars a year, and my whole life is committed to service. And my point of view, I think it was Brian Tracy said, you want to make more money, become more valuable to more people. In other words, figure out how to give greater service to the ones you're already serving, and also figure out how to serve more people with that greater service. Deepak Chopra once told me that his morning prayer is, show me how to be of greater service to greater numbers of people. I want to help more people, and I want to help them more fully. Well, if you do that on a day-to-day basis, people are going to go, I want to work with you.
Sure.
You're giving me more value, and you're giving it to more people. We'll get there faster. So that's really what the work's about. You have to balance it. You have to take care of your body.
Right.
That's called self-care. We need to
Right.
do yoga and stretch. We need to meditate. We need to eat well. We need to get enough sleep. We need to make enough money so we can take care of ourselves and our children and buy good medical care and take care of our parents when they're aging. And so we have a lot of responsibilities in the financial realm of our life, the business realm. But we also need to have fun. We need to have recreation. We need to recreate ourselves. That's what recreation means.
Yes.
We need to eat healthy, get massages, all that good stuff. And we do need to make a difference. And we can surround ourselves with wonderful stuff. I mean, if you were to walk through my home, you'd say, this is a lovely home. It's not 35 rooms like Bill Gates has. We don't need 35 rooms.
Right.
But it's plenty to do everything I want to do and support the lifestyle I want to have. My offices are on my property. I walk all of 12 feet to work. My staff works in what used to be a guest house on the property. We all come to work in jeans and shirts like this. And so I've created a great life for myself. And meanwhile, I've helped 500 million people be inspired by the books. I've trained over 1 million people live.
And the kids in China are learning how to read with chicken soup.
Yeah, as I told you, they have books, English on one page, Chinese on the other, and they're using them to teach English to the kids in China because they know that English is the international language of business, and they want them to know how to speak English. And now they've sold over 300 million books like that in China. 300 million.
That's amazing.
That's insane.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say about what you were saying is that all those of us who come from that Gita Neshama, which means good soul, that's a nice Jewish word. I'm not very Jewish, but that's one of the words I know. And we have sometimes, this is one of the biggest deals that I see, think that we're not supposed to charge for it. It's like, you're part of the church, you're supposed to give it away for free. And what happens then is that we tend not to get the word out. And I think that one of the biggest blessings that you can do is tell people what you do. Because if you are depriving them of that service, they're not getting your gift. And so you have to let people know what your gift is and get the word out. So that's the good part of marketing, where you're authentically communicating who you are and what you do.
I tell people, imagine you had the cure to cancer, and you knew it was the cure to cancer. You would be doing the world a disservice not to let everyone in the world know you have that cure.
Exactly.
And all the people that we work with, that we train, they have a cure for a lot of ails that ail people in terms of, depression and lack of income and unfulfilling relationships and so forth. And I think, too, that it's okay to make money. If I give a child a bike, I just give it to them. Versus I tell the child, you have to earn the money for this bike. Which bike do you think they're going to take better care of?
Definitely. Absolutely. The one
that they paid for.
Yes.
With their own efforts. And so people value things that they pay for. Now, I'm not saying you can't be philanthropic. I give away a lot of money.
Sure. And
I give scholarships to people to come to my seminars who are doing pro bono work in the inner city. Maybe they're a nun, they don't have an income, and they're working in the inner city. I'm going to scholarship that person in. They've dedicated their life to that. But most people, I remember someone once called me and said, can you scholarship me into your training? I said, why? So, well, I just spent my last $7,000 on a Tony Robbins workshop. Now I want to come to your workshop. I said, well, go make another 3,000 or 4,000 and call me in a year. It's like, I don't want to be the guy that's giving away the free stuff if you can afford it.
Right.
But the key is that we want to support ourselves. And I remember it's difficult for those of us who are committed to making a difference. I have a classic story I think I tell it in The Secret, about how I wanted to earn $100,000 one year just to prove that the techniques I was using worked, because I was making $8,000. And W. Clement Stone said, I want you to set a goal that's so big that if you achieved it, you'd know it was only because of what I taught you. So here I said, making $8,000 a year, 8 with 3 zeros. So I said, I want to make $100,000 in 1 year. He said, great. Gave me an affirmation to you. He said, I want you to visualize it every day. And after a while, I started getting these $100,000 ideas. And one of them was I could raise my fee. And that's when a friend of mine from graduate school called. And I said to him, Hanuk McCarty was his name. I said, Hanuk, how much do you charge? He says, $900. I said, $900? How do you get that for a day working with teachers? He said, I ask for it. So I said, I'm going to ask for it. So I remember practicing. I was getting 3. And I was very uncomfortable asking for more than that because I thought people would think I was a capitalist pig, rip off people, didn't care about kids, all that ego image stuff. And so I practiced it. What's your fee? I went down to $800. I thought that'd be safe. I said, $800, $800. I did that for days in the mirror. Guy calls me from Iowa, says, we want to hire you to come do a weekend workshop. I said, fine. He said, what's your fee? I went, Hey, $600. He said, no sweat. And I said, what would have been sweat? He said, we had $1,200 in the budget
Oh
for
my
the speaker.
God. Oh my
So the
God.
next guy that called me about a week later, he said, what's your fee? I said, $1,200. He said, we only have 9, I think. I said, I'll take it, right? But I tripled my income. The money was there. I didn't think I deserved it, was worthy of it. In fact, they had valued what I was going to do for them at a higher value than I was valuing it for myself.
When my husband and I first got together, I had a goal in my mind that I wanted to bill $1 million a year. And so I started doing the Louise Hayes affirmations. So, and I every night I wrote down, I am billing $1 million. I forget what year it was. This year I'm billing $1 million. And I wrote it 10 times every night. And during that year, this really bizarre thing, first of all, I did, and I billed more than that. But secondly, I was challenged because a tobacco company called me and asked me if I'd like to do this project. It was $1 million project. One project. And I went, I'm sorry, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I wanted to do it. Oh my God, I wanted to do it, but I couldn't live with it because I think
You didn't want to help people smoke. I get it.
So, but it was interesting because there was a challenge at the same time that I was doing this affirmation. I also got a challenge. I could have had it boom like that. It would have been like in 2 months, I would have made $1 million. And I said no, and I still billed $1 million that year. So affirmations are pretty amazing.
See, you started to attract more opportunities to do that, and you were even able to say no and still pull it off. That's great.
Right. I didn't think I had told you that before. I'd forgotten about it, but that I used affirmations in that way. So,
yeah.
So, and success principles. We didn't talk about that much. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to that book?
Yeah, I came to it after Chicken Soup for the Soul doing really, really well. And then people would start to say, what's your secret to success? You know, my best year with Chicken Soup, I think I made $6 million in book royalties in 1 year.
Wow.
And that changed my life. You know, I mean, I'm writing checks to the government for like $1 million in taxes and stuff, you know, more than that, did it quarterly. And it was like, holy mackerel. And I got to move into a big house. We got out of the kind of the urban, wasn't a ghetto, but it felt like a ghetto. It was a suburban urban area. And there was gangs that were kind of creeping into the area and so forth. And all of a sudden my life was radically, radically different. And people were going, well, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you do it? So one day I sat in bed. I can remember it was my son, who was about 12 at the time. And I was sitting there typing in my computer in bed on a Sunday morning. And he said, what are you doing? He had his computer too. And I said, I'm typing up all the principles and strategies I use to be successful, and I might write a book about it. And I ended up with like 113 principles that I had lived my life by. I had way too many. And my publisher said, no way, we're doing 113 principles. You got to condense it and combine them. And I thought I'd do 3 a page. It'd be 3 pages per principle, have 70 principles, short 210-page book. But it took longer to do some of those principles. And so I ended up with a 500-page book. Then I said, well, what if it's just idiosyncratic to me and these are not universal? So then I interviewed 75 of the most successful people in North America.
Wow.
Publishers of newspapers, Olympic athletes, professional athletes, people like Steve Jobs, those kind of people, to make sure they weren't just unique to me.
Right.
Generals in the Army, Oscar-winning actresses. And I realized when I sent them a list of the principles, I said, which ones of these did you use? And they all said, most of these were the ones I used. So then I said, okay. Then I said, can I interview you so I can tell your story? Because if people know that you did it, then they'll believe it's really doable and that it's something that they should do because you did it and you became a millionaire or a movie star or whatever. So that's how that book came to be. It took me 3 years to write it. And I remember the last 6 months, I would start writing around 8 at night because I had a job during the day to run my company and run workshops. And I'm typing, and next thing I know, I'd hear birds singing. I'd look over, and I'd see the dawn was coming up. And I was just so into it, you know. And then I asked 40 people to read the manuscript and give me feedback, which I recommend all authors do, because most authors, the only person that ever read the book was you, your wife or your husband, the acquisition editor, maybe a literary agent, and then it goes out to the world. You have no idea how it's going to be responded to.
Right.
So with Chicken Soup, we had 40 readers for every story, tell us on a scale of 1 to 10. So I thought we'll do this again with this book. So I got all that feedback, restructured the book, resequenced it a little bit, changed some of the stories. And then off it went, and it became a bestseller. It sold, I think, 750,000 copies in the first 5 years. And then we just did a 10th anniversary edition. What's exciting about that is that this new book, I replaced almost all of the stories of famous people with people who read the first book.
Oh.
And because of reading the first book and applying those principles, their life totally transformed.
Wow.
And I opened with a story about a guy named John Caleb who interviewed me in the Philippines when I was speaking in Manila. Came to a book signing the night before my one-day workshop. And he interviewed me at this bookstore. And afterwards, I said, well, John, that's the best interview I've ever had. How long have you been doing this? He said, you're my first interview. I said, John, I said, how could that be possible? He said, well, I had a restaurant. I got into a fight with my partner. It kind of ruined the restaurant. My girlfriend left me. I had to sell my car. I'm living on friends' couches, couch surfing. And I said, how much money do you have, John? He says, well, total cash net worth about $3. And I get, no, really, that's all he had in his pocket. And some friend was going to pick him up later. I said, here's the deal. Let me give you $20. Buy dinner on me. This is the beginning of your new life. I had to buy a book from the bookstore to give him because I didn't have one that was mine. I said, come to my seminar tomorrow. It was a one-day workshop. I said, my guest. So he did. I came back to Manila about 2.5 years later. I'm doing the same seminar there. And in walks this guy in a blue blazer and a big yellow medallion, like a coat of arms on his pocket. 10, 12 people, all with these blue polo shirts with the same medallion on their shirt. They were his retinue, his assisting team, his staff. He was now the #1 motivational speaker in Manila.
Wow.
He was making $1 million a year. He had 2 houses and a condo. He had cars and boats and TV show and the whole deal. I said, John, what happened? In 2.5 years, you're totally transformed. He said, I read your book, and I decided I would do everything in it for 1 year. He may be the only person that did every single thing in that for 1 year. And he said, your life is working, mine's not. I'm going to do what you did. If it doesn't work, I'll have wasted a year. He said, I did everything. Within a year, I was teaching this stuff. I was on radio. I was, having groups of 600 to 800 people showing up. They call him the Mr. Money Magnet now. And he teaches all this stuff. He's also gone on to work with Tony Robbins and some other people. But the point being that his life totally transformed. When you read that, here's a down and out guy who is now living his life. You met Forrest Willett in our seminar.
Yes.
Forrest had brain damage from the top of his head being sheared off at an automobile accident. Said he'd never talk normal again. He'd never walk normal again. And he heard me on TV in Toronto after a year of being depressed, being on all kinds of drugs, not speaking well. And he got his wife to buy my book, had her read it to him, hired a speech therapist so he could learn to read it himself, a reading and speech therapist. And then he decided after the first chapter he wasn't taking 100% responsibility, blaming everybody for his situation, the guy that hit his car. And now he came and took Breakthrough to Success. He took our Train the Trainer program. He's spoken in India, Dubai, Ireland, all over Canada. He's written 2 books, and I just got a book that one of our students gave me where he wrote the foreword to the book. That's in 5 years ago.
He's amazing.
He's in as well. Yeah.
So there are a couple of things here. One of them is, in my career so far, I've literally interviewed 65,000 people. I don't tell too many people that, but I've actually interviewed 65,000 people. And so, of course, you learn things. And you have probably, I can't even imagine the full number of people that you have influenced. And I'm wondering how you feel about this. I didn't even realize how much I was holding you in my mind until I had the opportunity to sponsor a luncheon for you, back in November. But, what does it feel like? I know a little bit from the smaller influence that I have of, people telling me I'm their Jack Canfield, which I think is the cutest thing in the whole world. But you really changed my life with that one exercise 30 years ago. One exercise changed my life. And you must hear that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And those are not the people, those are just the people who bring it to your attention, because so many people don't. Right?
I do. It's interesting. I'll share 2 quick stories with you to come to mind when you asked that. I was in London, England, running a one-day seminar, when I do a lot of one-day seminars around the world. And this guy that hired me to come over there and speak had me stay at his home. And so I stayed in his son's room. And, the typical kid's room with basketballs and hockey sticks and posters on the wall and all that good stuff, and a bed that was not all that big, but it was comfortable. And he said to me at dinner that night, when his dad wasn't there, he said, "Thank you for that workshop you did with my dad." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we talk about my dad as the before Canfield dad and the after Canfield dad." He said, "Because my dad wasn't a very nice guy. And after he came back from your workshop, it was a 7-day workshop I ran back in the 1990s. He said, my dad was a wonderful dad. He just became this really nice person." And hearing that from a kid and knowing that it transformed the entire dynamics of that family, that was amazing. On the other end of the continuum, I was the MC of a luncheon that there was a major, God, I'm forgetting her name right now. She was married to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Perhaps you can think of her name.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Maria Shriver.
Yes.
Maria Shriver.
Yep.
So Maria Shriver was one of the speakers, and I was sitting next to her at lunch, and she said, "Oh, I just have to tell you that one year, Sergeant Shriver, her father, he said, bought everyone in the family a chicken soup book for Christmas, and everyone was different. Like chicken soup for the horse lover soul for the girl who loved horses, chicken soup for the, pet lover soul for someone who loved their dog, chicken soup for the woman's soul, whatever." And she said, they were the best presents we ever got. And totally, we were inspired. It opened our hearts. We had conversations about it. So when you think about that, and I think about 800,000 people that we've gotten off welfare with our programs,
wow.
And they're now earning money because we developed the Welfare to Work program for the state of California. People in a prison program at San Quentin were part of a pre-release prison program. So when they come out, they don't go back into prison. And it's like huge statistics, 75% better, lower recidivism rate. And I constantly run into that. I'll be in the workshop you were at, when one of the luncheon servers came up to me and almost whispering, "I'm not supposed to talk to you. I'm supposed to be serving lunch, but I want you to know your book changed my life."
Aww.
And exactly.
Aww.
And so I never get tired of hearing that.
Well, you have changed many people's lives, and it's a blessing. And just today I was talking to someone who said there are good spirits that have come down to help the world. And I thought about your Golden Motorcycle Gang. I couldn't help thinking about it when she said that. And I thought, yep, I hope I'm one of them. That's what I thought.
I think you probably are, my dear. Just so anyone who's watching this understands what you're referring to, I wrote a book called The Golden Motorcycle Gang, and it came from a graduate school experience where a visiting professor took us on a guided visualization back to when we decided to become a teacher. And most people went back to 4th grade, and Mrs. Jones was the teacher that inspired them, or they went back to some summer camp during college where they realized they loved teaching kids. And I went back to before I was born, which totally shocked me, and it shocked everyone else when I shared it later. And I was like just a spirit flying through space, looking down on Earth. I was born in 1944. It was when World War II was taking place.
Oh.
And there was bombs going off, and I thought, oh my God, it's like driving by an accident on the road that just happened. You're going to stop and help. So I said, I'm going down and help. And everyone's like, oh, you're being codependent. You should stay up here. We're in this spirit school or whatever. And so I decided to come down and incarnate and be born. And I keep meeting people like you and like John Gray and Stuart Emery and Arjuna Ardagh and Don Miguel Ruiz who wrote the Forgiveness. And I go, oh, you were part of that motorcycle gang. And we all chose to come down and help out, So some of us are what the Buddhists call bodhisattvas. We are people that have committed our life to service. And, it doesn't mean you have to walk around in orange robes and have a mendicant bowl and only eat rice. We're all doing it in our own unique way. And so, that's definitely, I'm committed to making a difference.
Did you ever see the movie Kumari?
I've heard of it. I've not seen it.
You have to see it. It's a really fascinating movie. This guy, Vitor, I don't remember his name. I'm not good at names. But so the movie is called Kumari, and he's Indian, but he lives in the United States. They immigrated here. I think he's probably was born here. And he watches his grandmother do her practices and stuff. And he has this belief that, there's a bunch of charlatans, all these gurus out there that are charlatans. And so he wants to prove that this is baloney. And so what he does is he grows a long beard, he grows his hair really long, and he puts on, Indian garb, and he goes out west, like near Phoenix or someplace like that, with an ohm stick. He's got this giant ohm stick, and he's walking with that, and he's barefoot, and he really perfected his yoga. And he's teaching Kumari version of yoga and all these belief systems. And, he's kind of making fun of it. He's like got the Pledge of Allegiance and saying it in Indian. So he's got people doing weird things, sticking their tongues out, like doing, all these funny movements, but they fall in love with him. And they go to him with all their problems. And he makes up these exercises like with this blue light and different kinds of things. And he is transformed by helping people. He becomes the guru. He ends up becoming the guru. And he exposes himself, because he's telling them that you are your own guru, I'm not the guru, I'm not what I appear to be, and all that. He's been telling them that the whole time. And in the process, he becomes this highly spiritual being that's changed lots of people. And mostly transformed himself.
That's great.
It's a really good movie. You should check it out. You have to get it on Netflix or something. But yeah.
Well, someone once said you can't give away love without the love first going through you. And even if you're pretending it like he was in the movie, he began to see the positive impact he was having, and also began to get the sense of that was fulfilling for him. Yeah. And that transformed him. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yep, it was great. So what did I leave out? What else would you like to tell people?
Well, I would like to say a couple of things. Number one, I really would encourage, if you know anybody that's got a problem with drugs or alcohol, this book, The 30-Day Sobriety Solution, How to Cut Back or Quit Drinking to Privacy of Your Own Home. It comes with a companion website that's free. It has daily exercises there. You can go and listen to the visualizations and the meditations. We teach you how to tap, EFT tapping, to tap away cravings, to tap away any guilt, tap away feelings that come up that you've been masking with alcohol or workaholism or obesity, whatever. And so the reality is that that's there, and it's a great resource for you or anyone you care about. The other thing is, if you haven't read The Success Principles, I would encourage you to do that. You can get a book, both of these books, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, most local bookstores, not all. And then I would also encourage you to check out our website, just jackcanfield.com. And we have home study programs, we have audio programs, video programs, books you can read, trainings you can take, our Breakthrough to Success training, which you took. And as you know, my big dream now is this 1 million trainers by 2030. So I would love to have you take a look at our online trainer program. It will radically transform not only your work, but it'll transform you. We ask people at the end, as part of the certification, to write essays on how it's affected your own life and how you see it affecting the lives of people you're working with. And everyone says, I bought this thinking it was going to help other people. It's mostly helped me. Right. Because I had to go through the exercises on the videos, and it's transformed my sense of responsibility. I've given up blaming and complaining. I'm starting to visualize. I now understand there is a system of success. I'm being a better parent, a better mother, a better teacher at church and synagogue, whatever it is. So, it's kind of like if I could pay people to do this work, I would do it. I'll bet. Because that's how strongly I believe in it. Like, I'll give you $100 if we just go there, Right. Can't do that. But the idea being, I promise you, everything we do is a money-back guarantee. If you don't like it, you can ask for your money back. There's no 30-day thing. It's whenever you want. I used to teasingly say, if 5 years from now you need $30, you don't have it, just send the book back, and we'll send you $30, no questions asked. We don't get any returns. It never happens. So I know this stuff works, and I just want to encourage people. Someone said about this book, it was on Amazon. They said, this book costs less than a bottle of wine. This book costs less than a 6-pack of beer. This book costs less than a bottle of cheap alcohol, and it can transform your life. So why not make the investment? I love it. I totally love it. So I want to say thank you so much. This is such an interesting talk, and you have made a huge difference in my life, and I know from talking to all the people who were there that you've made a huge difference in theirs, and that's just a tiny microcosm of all the people you've reached. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best with this book. I think it's a real gift to the world, so thank you. Well, thank you, Sharon. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with people. Thank you so much. Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.